How's it going, everybody? It's Parallax Abstraction, and this is Retro Flashforward, showcasing gaming's roots in the current generation. So, we are taking a look today at Hyperspace Pinball, which just recently came out on Steam. I actually was one of the people who voted to greenlight this game. It's very interesting. It bills itself as a combination of pinball and old-school space shmups, which are two genres of games I love to death, but utterly suck at. And I was like, that's a really cool hybrid idea. I'd actually really like to try that, and the videos looked interesting. So here we are. So this came out from a developer called Gamion, who at time of recording has a completely broken website. So I don't know what the deal is with that. They don't even have their logo on this game when you start it up. So I don't really know what's going on with that. I don't know if they survived to the end of its development or what. So I played this for a while now, and well, I'll show it off to you here and you can get the idea. So you got three modes. So you've got campaign, which is sort of the main game. You've got boss run, which allows you right off the get-go to play against a bunch of different, I guess, bosses from the campaign. And you've got endurance, which is just a little challenge mode that I'm going to show you. These are all three of the options in the game, and so it's a little bit sparse on that front, but even sparser, you're going to see here, is how the gameplay itself is. So let's just jump into the campaign. So every time you start a campaign, you start from the very beginning. There are no checkpoints in this game or anything like that. And, well, this is it. This is Hyperspace Pinball. So if you're both an enthusiast of pinball and shmups, you may notice that this looks a little bit sparse on both fronts. Very, very, very simplistic pinball table design, and there's not really much in the way of shmups because you're not really shooting per se in terms of shooting bullets or guns, and all you're really doing is hitting these enemies in the middle. But you may be thinking, well, we just started this off, so, you know, it's level 1, it's got to introduce you to things and get you a little bit more familiar with the mechanics and whatnot, so I'm sure it gets more complicated from here. Nope! Sadly not. This is basically what you get. So your goal in each of the levels is to hit a certain number of these enemies. You may see there's a little meter charging on the side of the level there, on the left side. So your goal is to take out a certain number of enemies, which will fill that meter up, which will then open a portal to the next level. You can also get points, as you can see, by doing loops and going down the sides and hitting the bumpers and doing other traditional pinball-y things. So your goal is to sort of maximize that as much as you can before you move to the next level. And every few levels, you will get a boss that you have to fight. The bosses vary in design a little bit. The bosses are actually kind of interesting. They are there we go. The bosses are actually kind of interesting. They vary a fair bit in design and attack pattern and things like that. They're probably one of the most interesting parts of this. I'll see if I can get there in the campaign, but if not, I'm going to show you the boss rush mode, so no big deal. And you may have seen there that little challenge thing that popped up. So yeah, if you meet certain conditions, you will actually trigger those little miniature challenges where it will give you different objectives to do that vary in complexity quite a bit. Those actually are kind of interesting. So one of them is, for example, it will trigger multi-ball, and it will be like, don't lose a ball for 10 seconds, which is actually harder than you might think. Or another one will be, like you saw there before, will be hit all these targets, or it will be get 3 loops. As you can see there, the game slows down when you achieve a 5 times rapid combo or more, which is kind of interesting, but also a little distracting. So those various challenges will happen, which will give you... here's a boss here. So here's the centipede. I've actually beaten this guy once before. And those challenges will give you, you know, significant bonuses if you pull that off. Those that come up are kind of cool. Whoa, what are you doing? Okay, this is interesting. I actually beat him very, very quickly the first time, so I didn't see his attack. But you can see the bosses are kind of neat, right? Because they all have their little different, interesting attack patterns and stuff that you have to deal with. The problem is you only encounter these once every few levels, and because this campaign mode has no saves or checkpoints or anything like that, you may have to get very, very far before you'll ever see the second boss. And having to fight the same one over and over again, well, that kind of sucks, right? So here's a bonus stage. You beat the boss, you get a bonus stage, which is just a time thing where every target is worth a significant number of points, and your goal is to hit as many of them as you can in the time allotted. Pretty standard fare. So we're going to go through that. And there we go. So we got out of that. As you can see, you get huge point bonuses for a flawless victory. There's also an achievement for a flawless victory, which is simply beating a level without losing a ball. And really, this is the meat of it. So you'll also see power-ups spawn once in a while that you can pick up. These will do things like, well, grow the jackpot value. You can get an extra ball this way. You can respawn the sort of ball save thing in the middle there. You may have seen there was the sort of arrows coming up from in between the flippers like that. And if you hit that, it sort of catapults you forward. You can do a thing like this that, yeah, puts your ball on fire, which basically means that it will... enemies that will take multiple hits will take one hit. That's basically the idea of that. So let's see if I can pull this challenge off. I haven't managed to before. Unfortunately, this is the bulk of it, and it's really disappointing. I had really high hopes for this game. I really love the idea of combining... As you can see, there's leaderboards in this. Not too many people are playing this because I scored okay and I'm only the 36th person. I had really high hopes for this game. The idea of combining pinball and a shmup is a really good one. And I could see ways to do that. Like, even when I sit and think about it in my head, I'm kind of like, yeah, there's ways you could blend those two genres together, and they're two genres that are focused on score attack and arcade mechanics. So in theory, they should marry together really well, but they just don't in this. This is far, far too simplistic. There's no complexity whatsoever to the table. This was clearly designed by someone who just didn't know how to make a pinball table, and this is not a shmup. Having to hit little geometry wars like enemies with your pinball, it does not make something a shmup, and this just isn't. There's really nothing shmup-like about this, and it's a real disappointment. And there's other complaints with the gameplay as well. You're probably seeing by just how I'm playing here. The ball physics they're not horrible. I've definitely seen way worse, but they're not great. The ball feels way too light. It feels like it plays more like pinball, the Pinball Effects series, which is a series I like, but I've complained a lot about how in that game the pinball feels less like a pinball and more like a ping pong ball. This is kind of like that. It's not, I would not say that it feels that light. So here we go, don't lose the ball. This is very difficult, as you can see. And the main problem is that the ball not only feels too light, but it really feels like there's a bias towards the center lane where it balls out. It just feels, even though the ball out lane in this table is not particularly wide, it feels like, the only way I can describe it is that it feels like the ball is much more naturally inclined to veer that way when it's heading downward than it would in a real pinball table. It just feels like the game is sort of artificially drawing the ball towards the center sometimes. And if there's one thing I hate that video pinball often gets wrong, is making it feel as that not just that the physics are unrealistic, but that they're artificially weighted towards the game's favor. They're trying to create challenge by basically making pinball not work like pinball, and that sucks. I don't like that at all. This slowdown thing looks kind of cool, and it gives you that little rush of dopamine where you're like, yeah, I pulled off something cool, but when you're trying to line up a shot or something, it's also very distracting. And the biggest complaint that I have is that there's too much randomness in this. Like, pinball is obviously a game that revolves a lot around randomness and luck to a certain degree. But it is also very much a game of skill because, you know, you can't rewrite physics, and every pinball table, based on its design, utilizes physics in a certain way, and if you get real good, you can sort of manipulate that to your advantage. That's how true pinball pros manage to score insane values, is by knowing how to manipulate the physics of the table. And you just can't do that in this, because the problem is that the enemies fly around in seemingly random patterns, and when you hit one, as you can see, it completely distorts the path of your ball. So if you're trying to line up a shot and aim somewhere, you can never count on that, because if an enemy flies in the middle of it, if your ball is, especially if your ball is not high power, where it's able to just cut through an enemy without slowing down at all, like this, when it's on fire, it can just sort of cut, you know, cut through anything and not be interrupted. But if that's not the case, your ball will bounce off the enemies and will fling itself randomly throughout the level, and it makes it very, very hard to try to line up a skill shot or something like that, because the enemies will just completely distort that. And because the enemies pretty much continually respawn until you hit the score target, you really can't count on being able to pull off the kind of shots that you want in order to maximize your score, because of the random element that the enemies cause. And that's insanely frustrating. Like, I'm terrible at pinball, mostly because I'm just not patient enough to learn how to truly utilize and path my way through the tables the way real pros can. But this is not a complicated table. In theory, this is something you could learn in no time flat. But the randomness of these enemy units that fly around completely negates any ability to do that, because you can't count on what power state your ball is going to be in and what paths the enemies are going to fly, so you may just get completely screwed by random chance, and there's nothing you can do about it. In a game where ultimately you, in two different genres, shmups and pinball, where ultimately you are supposed to be rewarded through persistence and practice, this also fundamentally screws up a core tenet of the genre by breaking that. Yeah, practice will get you better at this game, but you will also repeatedly get screwed by forces beyond your control, which takes a lot of the skill out of it and makes it more like Mario Party, where no matter how good you are at it, sometimes the game is just going to be mean and there's nothing you can do about it. I don't like that. I really don't. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of the core idea of it. I'll show you the other modes here. I've got a lot of balls, so this is going to go for a while, so let's back out here. And yeah, as I said, there's no campaign checkpoints or saves, so you got to get real good at this if you want to have a prayer of ever getting through to the end, and that's just lame. Like, who's going to put that many hours into a game this simple? I don't know. So the boss rush mode is just that. It's take on bosses. Interestingly enough, now, I don't know if these bosses are unique to the boss rush mode or if they are bosses from the main game. That centipede boss that I showed you before is not in here. There's 8 bosses available here, so this might be unique. That's kind of cool if it has its own bosses that are different. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. But yeah, so this is the idea here. So your goal is just to get through this. There doesn't appear to be any scoring or anything in this. It's just, hey, here's kind of a little combat puzzle. And as you can see, there's basically nothing to the playfield here. It's just, here's 4 flippers and a dude in the center. Go. Some of these bosses do move around and stuff, but in a game that already has a simplistic pinball field, there basically isn't one in this mode whatsoever. Also 1 life, which, yay. So, oh no, there's the centipede. I'm sorry, he is number 3. So I guess these must be campaign bosses. So let's check this guy out. This guy looks kind of like a... Oh, this is like Breakout. That's kind of interesting, I suppose. So yeah, I wanted to do a video on this game because it's a new game that was supposed to be a mashup of 2 old school genres that I really dig, and it is, but it's a very poor version of both. And that is a bummer, because I really think a talented designer could do something cool with this. And I don't know anything about the developer or the history. I mean, like I said, Gameon's website is broken right now, so maybe this developer went out of business partway through or ran into trouble. I don't know. Maybe this didn't end up being the vision that they had. Some people get mad when they play bad games. You know, you've seen me play Siberia. You know what can happen there. But I'm not really mad at this game. I'm just... Yeah, so so I beat the boss, the portal opened, and it just immediately cut back to the menu. So it's literally play the boss, and that's that. So, and then there's this simple endurance mode, which is just... It's hit as many guys as you can before you lose your 1 ball. and that's how it scores you. So you see, I did this once before. My best is 27 hits. I totally boned that there. So you're getting the idea. And yeah, I mean, presentationally, this game is okay, but it's incredibly basic. I do like the neon color palette and like this kind of interesting sort of nebula background here. I think is pretty neat. I actually like that, but yeah, obviously the designs, the enemy designs, and the table designs are incredibly basic. It looks very. It does not look like a high-end game. This is something that actually probably would have made a great mobile game, but interestingly enough, this is not out on mobile phones. This is only out on PC. I checked, because I kind of thought, oh, maybe this is a mobile port or something. Nope, it's not. It's just, this came out straight on PC. So, I mean, it looks okay, but certainly nothing stellar. The sound effects in this are very generic. They're not offensive, but they're nothing special either. And the music, I'm pretty sure, is just something that was licensed from a royalty-free site. I swear to God, one of the songs in this game I have heard in the background of someone else's YouTube video. I am positive I have. And, you know, they're nice little electronic songs in that, but they are completely unmemorable. You will never think back to how great the music was in this game. And I mean, royalty-free stock tracks, that's kind of what they are. They're designed to just be used as background filler. I can go to the royalty-free site that I use right now and find a million different analogs to the kind of music that's in this game. So, overall, it's just a very simplistic idea with simplistic execution and simplistic production. It's just a very, very simple thing all around. And now you may be thinking, well, you know, this is kind of interesting, and the idea may not be as fleshed out or as well executed as it could be, but I'd kind of like to try this anyway. You know, how much is it? That's the other problem. This is $10 Canadian, which is about $8.50 US right now. It's also $8.50 in British pounds. Yeah, wow. Oh yeah, also $8.50 euros. That's insane. For what you get in this, I think that's ridiculous. I think if this was like I said, this might have been a really good 99-cent mobile game. Maybe for $2 or $3. I suspect this will go on sale probably in pretty short order. Based on the leaderboards, I don't think there are too many people playing it. Maybe at that price, it'll be fun for the curiosity aspect of it, or just because you're craving for something pinball related. Maybe, but nah, I don't think it's not worth $10. It's not worth $8.50. There's just not enough to this for that. And yeah, it's a good idea. That's just amateur. Is amateur in its execution. And yeah, if you want to play pinball on your computer, there are much better ways to do it. Go play Balls of Steel. Go play what is it? Not the pinball title that Legendo Entertainment put out. I don't remember what it is, but there's a huge pile of older video pinball games on GOG. Go pick up almost any of those. They're all really, really good. There's a bunch of really, really good ones there. And yeah, and if you don't know which one to get, go play Balls of Steel, the old Apogee pinball game. That's still a great pinball title that plays far, far better than anything you would get here. And I still can get behind the idea of a pinball cross with a shmup. I really hope that a developer with more time, money, and talent is able to pull it off someday, but this is not only not that, I would say that especially on the shmup category, it really shouldn't even call itself that, and it barely it's pinball in its most basic concept, but this is a game that even someone who's not too familiar with pinball would say is a poor representation of the genre. So yeah, disappointing. I was really looking forward to this. I really wanted to like it, but it's just not very good. So like I said, not angry, just disappointed. I hope someone else can do better at this someday. So yeah, that is Hyperspace Pinball, developed and published in 2015 by Gameon Inc. for the PC. It is available on Steam for $8.50 US or your regional equivalent. Like I said, maybe when it's on sale, but I don't think this is at all worth it for full price. My name's Parallax Abstraction. Thank you all very much for watching. If you liked what you saw here, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. That does help me out a great deal. I'm gonna go play a better pinball game right now, I think. And yeah, you should too. Take it easy, guys. I'll see you next time.